If I love God, I'm going to strive to be obedient to him, right? Look at 1 John 5:3. It could not be more clear. In fact, this is love for God, to keep his commands. And I love this. I love this qualifier. And his commands are not burdensome. That's really important to hear today. His commands are not burdensome. When we follow the commands of God, they actually bring tremendous, tremendous blessing to our lives. And we're going to talk more about that here in a second, because what is the result of obedience? What's the result of obedience? It's God's blessing in our lives. It's his blessing. When we are obedient, God blesses that. Come on, we know this, don't we? We've all experienced this, haven't we, in our own lives? What is sin? It is rebellion against God. It is disobedience to the ways of God. So when I rebel, when I'm disobedient, what happens? We've all seen this in our lives. It wreaks havoc in our lives, doesn't it? There's so much devastation and destruction that goes on through our sin and the choices that we make, right? Obedience, however, is the opposite of that. It brings this blessing to us from God, right? And I'm so convinced of this in my life and in yours. Most people will never experience the fullness of God's blessing. In fact, I would argue everyone, none of us will ever experience in this life the fullness of God's blessing, because none of us will ever be perfectly obedient. But the more obedient we are, don't miss this. I believe the more of God's blessing he pours out on us. And you need to hear this, just in case. I always feel like I have to qualify this and make sure I say this. We're not talking about prosperity gospel stuff here. We're not talking about like, oh, if you're obedient, God's just going to give you all the money and all the health, all the wealth. Everything's going to be perfect all the time. That's not what I'm talking about here. There are so many things that when we are obedient to God, that we are blessed with, that go beyond material things, that go beyond physical things. There is a joy. There is a peace, there's a contentment, a satisfaction when we are in the will of God, being obedient to him, that you will not get from anything else in this world, right? And so obedience is what brings the fullness of God's blessing in our life. And so the question I have for us today is this, because I love you, I'm your pastor, I want to see you live in the fullness of God's blessing for your life, I really do. Are you being obedient?